the 1980s. And you are on your local station, Waringarri Radio, on this beautiful Wednesday morning. It is 18 minutes to the hour of 9. And joining us here in the studio, we've been promoting it all morning. It's the Premier of WA, Roger Cook. Welcome to the studio.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. Tell us, you're doing a bit of a listening tour of the region?
Yeah, dropping into Kununurra for me just for the day, but I brought a bunch of my ministers with me. We're really keen to come up here, engage with the community deeply, talk about some of the things we're doing, and of course hear from the community about what more we can be doing to promote the region.
Well, tell us about some of these things that you want to talk to the community about.
Yeah, well, one of the things, we're holding a forum this afternoon, or a community forum, which is an opportunity for people in a town hall-like environment, if you like, to sit down with myself and 5 of my ministers. I've got my Deputy Premier up here, Minister for Education, Minister for Lands, Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Minister for Police is coming as well. So the opportunity is for people to engage deeply with us so we can sit down and have a really long conversation about how the area is growing, what more we can do to support that growth, and how we can continue to make the East Kimberley such a great place to live.
Mm-hmm. And about some of the issues going on in the area as well.
Yeah, that's right. So these areas are really challenged, like a lot of regional Western Australia is, particularly around labour constraints, workforce constraints, the things associated with a bunch of supply chains, and of course a lot of the social issues that impact on these communities do so in a way which is challenging. So it's important that government is here to listen, engage deeply with not just the workforce that we have up here, but also the community. Mm. Continue to talk about what are people's aspirations, what are their concerns, and how can we continue to work with them to make sure that we do better.
So inviting everyone to come along and they can ask you any question whatsoever.
Yeah, that's right. But look, I think there's a registration system, so people can come along, register to join us, and it'll be a good chat.
Okay, the other thing, you're going to give us a bit of an update on talking about the expansion of the region.
Yeah.
I should tell you, Premier, we are on Facebook Live. So
excellent.
Hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone online.
I'm not sure I advised you beforehand. But the cotton gin, your government has invested quite heavily in it. And it's currently under construction, right?
Yeah, significant investment there. This is a really important piece of economic infrastructure. We know that if we can process some of our cotton products, export them at a higher value, that's a really important opportunity as well. But of course, the jobs that come with that processing are really important. And the thing which I find fascinating and I love about this project is that the husks that come from the cotton processing, sorry if I'm massacring the technical information here, are a valuable high protein feedstock as well for cattle. Mm. So it's a synergistic sort of piece of economic infrastructure, would be a really important opportunity for the region.
So the idea is to make it scale, to make it large enough that, especially with the gin here, the processing facility here, so you don't have to cart it all the way to Queensland.
That's right, yeah. And so it's about resilience, it's about continuing to grow the regional economy.
So a lot of land, some of the land's been cleared for that further expansion of the Ord. Down at the end of the road here, Weber Plains Road. So the cotton gin is going to be built down there. You're going to see where it's at?
Yeah, just got to check it out. I think they're in the early stages of construction. We've got foundations, beams being constructed. It will essentially elevate the local economy by about $250 million. So while it's a small piece of infrastructure in itself, it's going to have a really meaningful impact in terms of the way the local economy works.
I just wanted to ask you about one of the investors. Namoi Cotton is Australia's largest and oldest cotton processing company over in the east. They own about 10 processing facilities in Queensland and also New South Wales. Now, they're one of the big investors in it, and they're about to be taken over, bought by a Singapore-based company. Any concerns about that?
I don't have personal concerns, no. I mean, we know that the Australian economy is integrated with our Southeast Asian partners, so we need to continue to look to opportunities to continue to integrate ourselves into these fast-growing local regional economies. That includes inviting and welcoming foreign investment into a lot of our local companies.
Well, I've noticed that Namoi Cotton last week called on their shareholders to approve the takeover by Olam Agri's takeover bid from their Singapore-based. Given the Treasurer's announcement only just the other day, which affects an operation here, the Northern Minerals Limited, Treasurer Tim Chalmers, of course, ordered that 5 international companies linked to China who are based in Singapore divest their shares in Northern Minerals. That had to go, well, that was following advice from FIRB, the Foreign Investment Review Board. I'd imagine that the Namoi cotton, if that does go ahead, FIRB will have a good look at that as well?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. The Foreign Investment Review Board has an important role to play to make sure that any foreign investment doesn't compromise Australia's interests, both in terms of our national economy, but also our strategic interests. Northern Minerals is obviously really in a really important strategic industry for Australia at the moment. Critical minerals, rare earths, those elements are really important around our sovereign capability to both extract, process and use those products for manufacture. So that's part of our strategic framework. So you can understand in the context of the geopolitical pressures that we're experiencing right across this region, that the Commonwealth takes a really strong interest in relation to these matters. But at the end of the day, of course, FIRB is also there to be able to look at the credentials of the individual companies. So sometimes it may not necessarily be strategic or economic interests they're responding to. It might just be they've taken a hard look at that particular investor and decided that it's not in our interest for them to take such a significant stake.
So what's the WA government's reaction to that decision?
Well, we obviously welcome the focus from the Commonwealth on these strategic industries. I believe critical minerals and rare earths will play a very important role for Western Australia's ongoing prosperity. A lot of local jobs, a lot of important products, which goes to the energy transition. That is getting us to net zero by 2050. So we're really keen to make sure that there's a focus around critical minerals and rare earths, because we know that's going to be a key to addressing climate change and carbon emissions and all those things which contribute to the climate change that we're experiencing today.
But what's the message that goes out, though, to investors in Asia and China? Are you concerned about that? Because WA has a very good relationship with China, better than the national governments of years gone by. Labor has changed its rhetoric a bit on China, but it's still a strained relationship, isn't it?
Well, it's a respectful relationship. I think both China and Australia understand the important role that trade plays in our joint prosperity. But we also understand that it's a complex relationship, and particularly around strategic issues, that we sometimes have to stand up for Australia's interests. And that includes our strategic interests as it relates to our economic profile as well. So while we understand the important relationship we have with China, it's our biggest trading partner, is one of the keys to the success that we're having in Western Australia at the moment. That doesn't mean we can't differ on other issues, but we understand the important role that trade has played. So if you look at the work that the Albanese government has done in this space, we've seen barley come back on, straw, coal trade, trade in wine. So there's a whole range of different areas that are now opening up, which were closed off to us under the previous Scott Morrison government. So now that those trade channels are opening back up again, that's important for our economy. It's important for both countries.
Great. So look, moving on to local issues. So you were also going to give us a bit of an update. This youth facility that's being built in the Kimberley, across in the West Kimberley. A lot of youth issues, of course, in these remote areas, but also in Perth. And a lot of our youth get sent down to Perth, to the trouble detention centres down there. Hopefully that'll be no more in the future. How is the construction of the diversion? I believe it's going to be a diversion facility for young people aged 14 to 17. How's that going?
Yeah, Malamanu is a very important project for us, because it's an opportunity to assist young people who are potentially going on the wrong path, making the wrong decisions in relation to some of their life choices, an opportunity for them to go into a really important therapeutic environment to be able to get guidance and basically get their lives back on the road. So that's in construction at the moment. We expect construction to be completed by the end of this year, and for the model of care which we're developing in partnership with the local community organisation that will be responsible for running that, bedding that down and getting it run either at the end of this year or early in the new year. It'll be a really important opportunity to make sure that we're not simply tipping kids into a justice pathway. We want kids to actually get the opportunities to make good decisions in life, and obviously get the opportunities that come with the benefits of those good decisions. So Malamani is going to be a really important opportunity for both the community and for the government. We don't want kids to be taken off country to have to go down south to Perth to receive that level of custodianship. So we really do need Malamani to be an important part of that program.
So by the end of the year, you reckon?
Look, by the end of the year, construction will be completed, yes, and hopefully we can get it going as quickly as possible. But of course, what we'll need to do is to make sure that we then get young members of the community to be referred to that service, and then obviously for the service to commence.
And the whole idea, it's a holistic kind of facility, isn't it? Where you're going to have programs run through the facility. So it's not your typical detention centre.
Yeah, no, it's not a detention centre. And I think that's an important distinction to make. This is an opportunity to divert young people who are starting to have contact with the justice system and potentially tipping into a scenario when they're then prosecuted and then sent to detention down south. It's an opportunity to intervene early in those pathways to make sure they get they can get the care they need, the therapeutic services they might be needing, but then obviously to assist them to get on a better pathway.
Look, domestic violence, of course, that's been a huge issue. WA, Australia-wide, for months now, well, for years, but it's certainly been in the headlines. Now, what surfaced last week in Broome through court proceedings is that despite the Kimberley, in the last 3 months of 2024, having the highest recorded rates of family and domestic violence offences in the whole of WA, 1,702 reported incidents. Apparently there's not a single government-funded psychologist in Broome or in the Kimberley.
Certainly there would be funding for that position. It's more of the struggles that we have at the moment is actually getting people to come to the Kimberley to work, and that's writ large right across government services across the region. We are trying to do everything we can to incentivise public sector workers to come to the Kimberley. It's a great place to live, terrific opportunities and lifestyle, but we do struggle to attract workers to this area. That's why, as part of the current round of public sector worker bargaining arrangements, we're looking at creating more incentives for people to be attracted to work in the regions, and then incentives for them to stay in the regions.
And no doubt you'll hear at the forum this afternoon, sorry to butt in, we've got about 4 minutes left.
Oh, sorry. Yep,
you will hear that housing and cost of living in these remote regions is just incredibly high.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I brought my housing minister with me, to hear direct from people about their concerns in the housing situation. That housing is a pressure, from the metropolitan area out. And of course, it's felt most acutely in our regional communities. So there's a lot of work to be done in that space. Sorry, Fernando, I should just go back to the family domestic violence issues. It's a really important one.
Sure.
It's an insidious crime. It's a blight on our society. And we continue to invest in services right across the state. Indeed, I've invested over $420 million since we were elected in 2021 alone in extra family and domestic violence response services. And we need to continue to do more. Also, the impact of alcohol and drugs in our community is a contributor to the level of family domestic violence. So the work we're doing in the community around the BDRS, the Banned Drinkers Register, and other measures to curtail the amount of alcohol abuse in our community is an important part of our response to family domestic violence.
And your firearms, changes to firearms laws. Just on that, I've seen some comments. Of course, not everyone's happy with with the decision that you've made there. The firearms to impound. Let's just remind people: impound guns of people who have guns as soon as a violence restraining order is issued.
Yeah, so this is in response to the circumstances that we saw in Floreat last week, which are horrible, horrible crime. And it has been alleged that the police missed signs, the opportunities to take the guns away from the individual in that particular case. So with the current laws that we have before Parliament at the moment, we're looking at tweaking those to just take away that question of doubt, if you might say, or judgment that the police officer on the beat has to make at the time. So if someone is subject to a formal complaint to the police as a result of a family and domestic violence dispute, we will take the guns out of the equation. It could just be for a short time while they assess the situation. But we just don't want the situation to escalate and for another situation, as we saw in Floreat just last week, occur again.
I saw a comment that somebody said that, quite a few people are saying the common law presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Are you concerned there that a lot of people that are innocent and it doesn't, it doesn't stack up, get their guns confiscated. They're presumed guilty.
Yeah, look, and I acknowledge that there's some concerns in the community about that, but my main priority is the concern about safety. So this is not an accusation or an admission of guilt. It is simply a police procedure which will allow them to assess the situation without the guns being part of that overall consideration.
What about the number of guns?
Yeah, well, the number of guns is a particular focus under our gun law reforms, which are in front of the Parliament as we speak. They're an important part of making sure that we take the excessive number of guns that we have in the community out off the streets and out of the community. We know there's direct correlation between incidents of gun-related crime and the number of guns in the community. So reducing the number of guns in the community, that is limiting it to people who have legitimate needs for guns, particularly in regional Western Australia, is an important part of just taking the number of guns out of our community. That will keep the community safer. And that's one of my key priorities.
Just on that, the number of guns that a person can own.
Yeah, so a farmer can own up to 10 guns, and we think that's an adequate amount. And this was all subject to 2 years of consultation with the farming communities, with people, with everyday people who have an interest in guns and own gun licences. But the key principle here is that owning a gun licence is a privilege, not a right. And we want people to understand that our key concern is about public safety. And that's why it's reflected in the laws we put in front of Parliament and is reflected in these minor amendments that were made since the incidents or the murders of Floreat took place.
Premier, it's 9 o'clock. It's been a great pleasure having you here. We wish you well on your listening tour of Kununurra. We'll just remind everyone that the forum is taking place at the Picture Garden at 2 p.m. this afternoon. A couple of hours?
I think so. But of course, we do ask people to register to make sure that we understand who's in the room and we can answer all their questions.
But anyone can come along. Thank you very much, and we wish you well for the rest of the day. It's a beautiful time of year to be here. Perfect time of year to be here.
It's stunning. It's one of my favourite parts of Western Australia. It's great to be back.
Enjoy. Great to have you on Waringarri Radio. The Premier of WA, Roger Cook, here in our studio. You are on your local station, Waringarri Radio.
Hello, I'm Linda Burney, the Minister for Indigenous